Hi there, my name is Irene, and in this video, we're going to talk about scenes, how we create them, how we manage them, and what scenes allow us to control. So let's get to it. All right, so at this point, we have learned a lot of different ways to control what we see in our SketchUp model. From using sections to switching the setup of our camera to using the walk and look around commands to help us better navigate spaces. But one of the biggest problems that we still have is the fact that we still need to manually navigate to all of these different views. So what do I mean with this? Well, for example, let's say that I am putting together a presentation for this space here. So I am taking a screen capture. Spoilers, you should not be taking screen captures. There's a better way to extract information from your SketchUp model. But let's say that you take a screenshot and you put it in a presentation, and then maybe you have some annotations, some like arrows indicating things or some bubble points or something like that. And then you continue working with your project and you continue changing and adding things to your model. And then later down the road, you need to revise that presentation. So you need to bring your camera back to that original position. So the problem here is that even though it might look like it's in the same place, it is not exactly the same place. And this is going to cause that when I extract this image with a screenshot once again, and I put that in my presentation, I'm going to have to adjust everything. Like all of my arrows, all of my text, everything is going to have to shift a little bit because it is impossible to put your camera exactly in the same position. Unlike in other softwares such as 3ds Max, we don't have a coordinate system here. So it's not like I can say the camera has to be at X, Y, and Z looking at X, Y, and Z. So that's a problem. This is where scenes come in handy. Now, I'm going to make it super clear. I'm going to have, I think, 2 other videos that are just going to talk about the specific different applications of scenes. This video is just going to be an introduction of how scenes work, okay? So what are scenes? Well, scenes are going to basically allow us to capture this moment, to freeze this moment, and remember the properties of not just the camera setup, but other properties as well. So how do we create a scene? To create a scene, we're gonna go to View, and you're gonna find Animation, and then you're gonna add a scene. Now, you're gonna get this message the first time that you create a scene. And for the time being, we are going to ignore it because we don't know styles yet. We're going to be learning that in a different video. So you could save as a new style, update the selected style, or do nothing to save the changes. I'm going to leave it with create as a new style, and I'm going to create my scene. And all you're going to see is that your user interface has changed a little bit. Now at the very top, we have this little tab for our first scene. And again, nothing has changed in your model because scenes will not affect the model itself. They do not create geometry. They do not create information within the model space. They create information about the model space. And the first and most important thing that they're going to do is remember our camera position and what our camera is looking at. So for example, if I come here and I'm working and blah, 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 and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, when I want to return to that previous scene, all I have to do is click on my scene and zook, it's going to bring me back. So in and on itself, if this is all scenes would do, I would already be like, this is a really good tool. Because again, this is going to mean that you can set up as many views of your project as you want to, for a presentation, for construction documentation, for whatever it is that you're putting together. And then you're going to be able to just quickly cycle through them instead of each and every time having to set up your camera and move it and adjust it and whatnot. So in and on itself, this is already fantastic. Now, what happens if I want to add more scenes, if I want to get rid of scenes, if I want to edit scenes? So the first and most important to understand is editing your scene. So the whole point of scenes is that we are capturing a moment in time. It's almost like you took a photograph of the model at that point. So it is important to understand that if you make changes and you want SketchUp to remember those changes, you're going to have to tell it so. So for example, let's say that I'm looking at my scene here and I'm like, crap, you know what I forgot? I forgot to set up my 2-point perspective. We talked about this in a previous video. The regular perspective that SketchUp starts with doesn't look very professional, like this tilting of my scene and this. It makes it look a little bit messy. So let's say that I realized my mistake. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to go, oh, no, this is supposed to be a 2-point perspective. And then I'm going to set it up and I'm going to be like, yes, that's actually what I wanted to see. right? So again, by default, SketchUp is not going to know if this is a change that you want to preserve. Because again, the whole point of scenes is that you capture that moment in time, and then you can continue working with your model however way you want. So you may need to change your camera settings while you're working with your model. How is SketchUp supposed to know that you want to keep these change? So if you set up a scene and then you want to make changes to said scene, you're going to have to go back to your scene, right click on it, and update it. So you're going to see that you have a couple of options here. Some of these I will ignore because they make a little bit more sense later or through different means. So in this case here, I'm just going to show you update. So I can go here and say update. And now what's going to happen is that, as you can see, as soon as I orbit, it kicks me out of my 2-point perspective. See how it switched me back to perspective? But guess what? Because I told SketchUp to remember the fact that this scene is supposed to be a 2-point perspective, when I click on this scene, it's not just going to move my camera position, it's also going to change my camera settings. So any settings that you have here, you can adjust and then save within a scene. So again, basically all of your camera settings will be remembered by your scene. You can also rename, delete scenes and whatnot. If you want to add more scenes, you could go back to your view and then animation and then add scene, but that's too many steps. It's like 1, 2, 3 to get to that. It is much quicker if you want to add a scene. Let's say that I want to add another scene that now is looking at my kitchen, but from this, oh, I got kicked out. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to say, oh, now I'm going to remember that it is supposed to be a 2-point perspective. There you go, much nicer. And if I want to add a scene, it's going to be similar to creating a scene. I can go view, animation, and add another scene, or I can just go right click and add. So see, now I have scene 1, now I have scene 2. Another thing that I like is the fact that you have these search bar here, and you may be like, haha, how silly. Why would I need to search between 2 scenes? And the thing is that depending on the size of your project, you may end up having 50 scenes, 100 scenes, God knows how many. So it is actually really nice that they give you that scene search option, okay? So I'm gonna skip here. I'm gonna collapse my entity info. We don't need it right now. And now I want to talk about the way that we actually want to manage our scenes, because again, having to go to the menus is always like big no-no in my books. Like there's always a better way of doing things. And then also these little tabs here are not bad, but they are limited. So for us to manage our scenes, we're going to do it through our tray. And you can actually see that I already have my scene window here. But if you don't have it, remember, no worries. You just have to go window, default tray, and you're going to turn on whichever it is that you want to work with. So in my case, we're going to be working with our scenes here. Now, what you see here is still quite limited, but just to identify some of the icons here. So you're going to see here your scenes. So I can double click and that's going to allow me to switch between scenes. You can see this little pencil here in the bottom right corner. That means 2 things. Number 1, that is your current scene. And also like if you're going to be doing any edits, you're doing them to that scene. So if I double click, that switches. So let's get back to this one. This guy here is going to be the equivalent of the buttons that we see here: add, update, delete. So this is going to allow me to update my scenes. This is going to allow me to add scenes, and this is going to allow me to remove scenes. If you want to rename a scene, you can right click and rename it here. There's going to be more information, so I'm going to ignore it for the time being. You also have these little arrows here that are going to basically allow you to move the position of your scenes. So for example, I could move down my scene 1, and that basically means that my first scene is going to be 2, and then my next scene is going to be 1. This doesn't make a lot of sense right now because we just have 2 scenes that are not connected in any way, shape, or form, but will be quite important later down the road. You can also here change the preview of your scenes. So you can have small thumbnails, which is going to give you just a little preview, but this are these scenes for ants? I can't see anything there. So if you're going to do the images, I would rather go with the large thumbnails. I can actually see those. You can also go with details, which is what we initially had, or you can go with the list, which is just going to give you the title. Personally, I'm used to working with the details, and I kind of like them because it gives me the image preview, but then it also gives me the name of the scene. And then finally, and most importantly, you have this option here, show detail. This is super important, and I always have it expanded because it helps you just see how deep the rabbit hole goes in terms of what you can do with scenes. So let's click on it, and here we go. So now you can see all of the things that scenes allow us to control, and you're going to notice that scenes are actually quite powerful in SketchUp. So number 1, you can name your scenes more easily here because it's always going to be visible. So for example, I could say that this is kitchen perspective. Let's just call it 1, and then I can come here and say it's going to update immediately, and I can come here and say kitchen purse 2. So again, maybe this is just me, but anytime that I can spare myself having to click on things, I think that saves time. So having to right click here and then click on rename, to me takes longer than just having these options open and renaming here directly, which is why I prefer this option here. Now, once again, what I find the most interesting about these details is all the things that my scenes are saving for me. So number 1, as we already mentioned, camera location. Now you're going to notice that all of these is being checked on. So this is important to understand. If you check off any of these attributes, properties, you're basically telling SketchUp, I don't want my scene to remember this thing in particular. Now, I have never been in a scenario where I'm like, I don't want it to remember. I want it to remember as much as possible. If it can remember my phone number, my social insurance number, and my address, I would let SketchUp do it. So I don't really understand why you would want to have scenes not remember something in particular, but that's an option. What I find more interesting is to check what are the things that our scenes can remember. So again, we have camera location, but then we also have top level hidden geometry, hidden objects, invisible tags. So what do these mean? Well, these means that your SketchUp scenes can remember you hiding and unhiding things. So both groups, components, and raw geometry, and tags as well. So let's see a couple of examples. So for example, let's say that I want to hide this tool. So this is just a group or component that I'm going to right click and hide. Right? So I'm going to click outside. I have my view objects on, see? So I'm going to turn it off. I also want to hide geometry. So for example, I'm going to come here all the way until I can touch just the top of my countertop, so raw geometry, and I'm going to hide this as well. Again, this looks insane, but it's to prove the point. And then finally, just to make things interesting, let's say that I'm going to go to my tags, and let's say that I want to turn off my lights, okay? So there you go. We have hidden a group or component, we have hidden a raw geometry, and we have turned off a tag. So once again, if I want SketchUp to remember these things, what I'm going to do is I'm going to update my scene. And now we know that we can update our scenes either by updating here, or we can right click and update here. So again, whichever one works best for you. So I'm going to update here. Again, I'm going to ignore all of these and I'm going to say, okay. So now what you're going to see is that when I go to my kitchen perspective too, all of the elements that I had hidden have been returned except for the top of my countertop. So why is this? Well, the reason for this is because you kind of have to read the description. It is telling me that it's going to remember top level hidden geometry. So what does that mean? That means that this hiding and unhiding of raw geometry is only going to work if the geometry is not within a group. So, okay. How do we fix this? Well, we need to basically remove the raw geometry from the layering of group and components. So let's say I'm going to go back to my countertop. And again, I'm going to turn on my hidden geometry and I'm going to select this guy. And let's say I'm going to just unhide it. So there you go, unhide. So what I'm going to do here is, I don't want to see these guys anymore. There you go. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take the entire countertop, the group or component that is my countertop, and I'm going to go Control X. So I'm going to remove it from, because again, it was a group within a group, and I'm going to paste it here. So edit, paste in place, so it doesn't move anywhere. So if I come here and I explode this guy, and now I come here and I say, okay, I want to hide this guy in this one scene, and I update it, now you're going to see that in between scenes, it does understand that, oh, you want to hide, you want to unhide this. So I just want to clarify that. Now, to be entirely honest, I would never do things this way because one of the most important rules in SketchUp is that you should never have raw geometry in the model. This is super dangerous. This thing is super reactive, and if I model anything, it's going to merge. And fun fact, just because a raw geometry is hidden does not mean that it's not interactive. If I draw a rectangle now on top of what would be my countertop, you're going to get this message that says that your recent operation has caused visible geometry to merge with existing geometry that is hidden. So personally, this top level hidden geometry portion, I don't find that super useful, but that is just because I never have raw geometry in my model just laying around. Everything is part of a group or component one way or another. Okay, so very important to understand. So first thing first, your scene is going to remember objects, tags, and raw geometry that are hidden or unhidden. Your scene will also remember styles, fog, shadow settings, environment settings, and axis locations. Now, these three elements that we see here, I'm going to ignore for the time being because we haven't gotten there yet. So when we learn about these tools, we'll see how they implement with our scenes. But one that I find really, really interesting is axis locations. Because the thing is that your axes can be very helpful in controlling your model. So for example, if I go to a top view here, you will see that my model is kind of like nicely aligned with my screen horizontally. But that is because, I don't know if you remember, but we changed our axes in a previous video. But if I come here and I reset my axis, you're going to see that it's going to go back to that position. And then if I go to my top view, it's going to put it like this, which is a lot less convenient. So one of the things that I really like about scenes is that scenes can allow you to remember multiple axis positions. So I could say that, for example, in my first scene, I want my axis to be, I don't know, I'm just going to put it anywhere just so we can see the difference, right? So that is going to be, let me actually go back to my scene 1, and I can come here and say in scene 1, my axis is going to be like this. Now, you cannot quite see it, but we're going to be able to zoom out. So I can come here and say, okay, update. And then I can come here to my kitchen perspective too. And let's say that this time we're going to create a different placement. So in the first one, I did my red this way and my green this way. So let's do it the other way around this time, right? And once again, I can go update. So now if I go to my kitchen perspective 1 and I zoom and I zoom out, let's turn on my axes. There is my axis. So see, red this way, green that way. Now let's see what's going to happen if I go the other way around. If I come here and I turn on my axis, there you go. See, red this way, green this way. And this is going to allow you to change things such as how your standard views behave. So if I go to my top view here, see, it is aligned like that. But if I go to my top view from scene 2, now it's in a different angle. So again, this is going to be really, really nice if you want to map your standard views to specific scenes. So as you can see, scenes are quite powerful because of how much information you can imbue in them. And then finally, if you're feeling extra fancy, you can put a little description. So you could say like, we're seeing this here and this there. So I'm just going to do a brr, and you're going to see that here. So this is going to be helpful if, for example, again, I have kitchen perspective 1 and I have kitchen perspective 2. What is the difference between them? So I could have that in my description. And then finally, if you change your mind and you no longer want to have one or several scenes, you can always delete them. So I could come here and say, I no longer want kitchen perspective 2. So to delete it, again, you're always going to have multiple options. At this point, you have like 4 because you can go view, animation, and delete scene. You could go right click, delete. You could go right click and delete here, or you can simply go and press the minus and say yes. So whichever path you take doesn't really matter. All that matters is the fact that you have a lot of control over your model using scenes. But with that, we have reached the end of this video. I hope you find it helpful. If you have any questions, by all means, feel free to reach out. If you enjoyed this video, you can give it a like. You can also subscribe. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining in. Thank you very much for sticking through, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye.